Sometimes the biggest blessing is losing everything, because it's the only way you'll finally find yourself. If this speaks to you, comment below. I reclaim my time and energy and space. And share this divine message with someone you love. You never know who needs this right now. Welcome. Today we're going to reveal the deeper reason your life had to fall apart, why everything you built came crashing down, why people left, why plans failed, why the path you were walking suddenly disappeared beneath your feet. This wasn't punishment, it was a sacred intervention. This is the moment that pulled you out of the version of life that was never meant to hold your true power. Now listen closely. You didn't lose it all. What really happened is that everything that was never truly yours couldn't stay once your soul started waking up. You weren't losing your life, you were losing the version of you that settled for less. Losing the distractions, the masks, the illusions, the false timelines that kept you small. Because the truth is, some things can only be revealed through breaking. What if I told you the breakdown was the breakthrough in disguise? What if your heartbreak was the doorway to your awakening? What if all the things that fell apart weren't your life falling down, but your true life trying to begin? You see, the chosen ones often learn through loss. That's how deep your soul goes. Because surface-level lessons don't move you. It takes fire. It takes pressure. It takes the collapse of the old to awaken what's eternal in you. They tried to silence you, didn't they? Tried to make you believe you were too emotional, too sensitive, too much. But all along, it was your depth that made you powerful. It was your sensitivity that made you able to hear the divine whispers no one else noticed. And so when the universe saw you drowning in places too small for your calling, it had to step in. It had to tear the veil, because you wouldn't have left on your own. You loved too hard, you gave too much. You were loyal to what didn't love you back. Nobody tells you this, but when you're chosen, God doesn't let you stay comfortable in cages. He lets them fall apart. You were sent here as a frequency, not a follower. That's why the systems you tried to fit into kept rejecting you. That's why the friendships that used to feel safe started to feel heavy. That's why the job you gave your all to suddenly felt soul-draining. Because your spirit outgrew what your mind thought you needed. This is what they never wanted you to know. The sudden loss was never random. It was coded in your soul contract. You signed up for growth, not safety. You signed up for truth, not performance. You signed up to become the real you, not the version that pleased the world. So everything false had to fall, fast, all at once, because your timeline had to shift. Not next year, not when you felt ready. Now, because divine timing doesn't wait for your comfort. Let me ask you something real. What if your resistance was never against failure, but against forgetting your power? What if the things you thought were protecting you were actually distracting you from your purpose? They don't tell you that loss is often the language of angels. That silence is sometimes where God speaks the loudest. That isolation isn't rejection, it's realignment. When everything started breaking apart, your ego panicked, but your soul sighed with relief. Because finally, you were free to begin again. This time without the noise. This time with your truth intact. You didn't fit in because you were meant to break the mold. You weren't born to follow rules written by the blind. You were born to remember who you are, to become a living reminder for others who forgot. So when you lost that relationship, when the money dried up, when the doors slammed shut, it wasn't life being cruel. It was life being precise, surgical, sacred, strategic, because if the wrong things had stayed, the right things would have never had room to enter. Jobs can pay the bills, but purpose pays the soul, and you were never meant to live a life where your soul was starving. This world needed you to forget, until now. But now, you're waking up. Now you're beginning to remember, and that's why the storm came, not to destroy you, to deliver you, back to yourself. Let this sink in. You didn't lose everything. You lost the lies. You lost the masks. You lost the parts of you that couldn't survive in the light you're about to walk in. And from this point on, nothing will ever be the same. Now listen closely. When your whole world fell apart, you didn't just survive it. You transcended it. You were never meant to just recover. You were meant to resurrect. This season of loss was your spiritual earthquake. It broke the foundations that were built on fear, on people-pleasing, on survival mode. Because your next level can only be built on truth, and truth can't grow in fake soil. Nobody tells you this, but sometimes God will wreck your plans before they wreck your destiny. You were settling. You know you were. Maybe not in every area, but deep down you felt it. You were shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You were playing roles you had outgrown. You were ignoring your gut, your intuition, your calling, just to keep things looking stable. But God doesn't care about your image. He cares about your integrity. He cares about your purpose. So the friends you lost, the partner that walked away, the place that kicked you out, it wasn't random. It was divine surgery, cutting you loose from everything that couldn't come with you to your next chapter. They tried to keep you in a box, but you were born as a blueprint. That's why nothing felt right anymore. The job didn't fit. The people didn't see you. The routine drained you because your spirit was trying to tell you this isn't where we're meant to stay. And still, you held on because you're loyal, because you love hard, because you give chances. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Not everyone you love is healthy for your soul. Not every connection deserves to follow you into healing. Some people are only aligned with your broken version. The moment you start growing, they start fading. What if I told you that your emptiness was preparation? That your rock bottom was actually sacred ground? That what looked like rejection was really redirection? You were never crazy, you were just early. You felt things before others could name them. You sensed shifts no one else noticed. And when you tried to explain it, they made you doubt yourself. But you're not here to be understood. You're here to be undeniable. You losing everything was the exact signal that you were crossing a spiritual threshold. Not a setback, an initiation. You see, chosen ones go through collapse so they can learn creation. You're not rebuilding the same life, you're birthing a new one. A life built from alignment. A life guided by truth, not ego. So yes, it hurt. Yes, it broke you, but it also revealed you. It forced you to stop performing. To stop pretending you were okay when you weren't. To stop living someone else's story. Your delay was divine disguise, because while it looked like you were falling behind, you were actually being refined, hidden, sanctified. They saw failure. God saw foundation. Let this truth hit deep. If you hadn't lost it, you'd still be playing small. Still accepting crumbs. Still explaining your worth to people who could never see your light. You weren't just losing people. You were losing versions of yourself that couldn't hold your future. Let me ask you something honest. What if the loneliness you felt wasn't punishment, but preparation? Preparation for the kind of peace that doesn't require approval. Preparation for the kind of power that doesn't need permission. This world taught you to chase. Chase status, chase validation, chase safety. But the moment you started remembering who you are, everything that required you to forget had to fall away. You were sent here to disrupt patterns, to break generational curses, to be the first. And being the first means walking alone, until others catch up to your frequency. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. So when everything went silent, when nobody called, when you cried alone in your car, asking, why me? That was the moment heaven said, because you're ready. Ready to stop surviving, ready to start living, ready to step into a life that doesn't shrink your soul. This is the gift buried inside the grief. Now you get to rebuild. With wisdom, with clarity, with boundaries, with God. No more forcing, no more faking, no more fighting for a seat at tables where you were only ever tolerated. You are the table now, and those who truly see you will find their way. So let the past burn. Let it turn to ash. Because the version of you rising from this loss is fireproof. You had to lose everything so you could find what was never lost. Your voice, your essence, your vision, your divine rhythm. Because the truth is, you didn't need a restart. You needed a resurrection. And resurrection only happens after death, the death of who you thought you had to be. You are not broken, you are becoming. Let that sit for a moment. You are not broken, you are becoming. The pain you felt, it wasn't proof of your weakness, it was proof of your transformation. Butterflies don't grow wings without pressure. Diamonds don't emerge without being crushed. And chosen ones? They don't rise until they've been buried under expectations, buried under fear, buried under shame, until one day, they stop asking for air and start becoming the storm. That's you now, the storm that doesn't break but births, the silence that doesn't suppress but strengthens, the loss that doesn't destroy but distills. Because when you lose everything, you gain clarity. Clarity about who you are. Clarity about who never loved you right. Clarity about where you were betraying yourself just to belong. And now you move different. Now your soul doesn't beg. Now your light doesn't dim for rooms that can't handle it. You stopped asking for closure. You stopped waiting for apologies. You stopped explaining your transformation to people still addicted to the old you. You let go. And because of that, you leveled up. And it's funny, isn't it? How when you finally surrender the life you thought you wanted, God hands you a life that actually fits. A life that feeds your soul. A life where peace isn't a stranger. A life where you don't have to hide your truth to be loved. You didn't just lose a job. You lost a false identity. You didn't just lose a friend. You lost a one-sided soul contract. You didn't just lose control. You lost the illusion that control ever kept you safe. You lost to gain yourself, to gain realness, to gain vision, to gain alignment. And let me remind you of something sacred, the version of you that crawled through that loss, the one who had nothing but still showed up, still tried, still believed. That version of you, they deserve everything that's coming, because you didn't fold, you didn't give up, you didn't become bitter, you alchemized the ashes. Now you walk different, because now you know. You know who you are, you know what you bring, you know what you'll never tolerate again. You see, when you lose it all, you also lose the lies. The lie that you had to earn love. The lie that being quiet made you safe. The lie that success was only real if other people applauded it. Now you're creating a life that honors your nervous system, not just your resume. A life where your spirit feels safe, not just your wallet. A life that doesn't look good on the outside, but feels holy on the inside. This is what alignment tastes like. This is what divine timing feels like, and none of it would have happened if you hadn't lost what wasn't real. So let them talk. Let them wonder how you're still standing. Let them whisper behind your back. You've been anointed in silence. You've been promoted in the dark. You've been crowned in secret. And what's coming next? It's not revenge. It's revelation. You're not rising to prove. You're rising because it's time. Time to walk as who you are. Time to speak as who you've become. Time to shine, not for validation, but for alignment. Everything you thought you lost was actually a divine exchange. Your fear for your faith. Your exhaustion for your expansion. Your limitation for your liberation. You didn't just survive the collapse. You became the blueprint. And from now on, nothing is ever going to hit the same. You're going to look back at this season and say, "Thank God it all fell apart." Because if it hadn't, you never would have rebuilt it with soul. You never would have said yes to your deeper knowing. You never would have discovered how powerful, how resilient, how chosen you really are. This is your new beginning. This is your divine return. And this time, you're walking with clarity, with vision, with God. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when you realize you didn't just lose things, you were stripped of illusions, stripped of attachments, stripped of false identities you picked up just to survive in a world that never saw you right. And that stripping, it wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Because when God is about to elevate you, He doesn't build on shaky ground. He clears the debris first, He removes what's not rooted, He lets it all fall so He can show you. This was never your foundation. You had to be emptied so He could fill you with truth. You had to be humbled so you could walk with power without pride. You had to be broken so your gifts could pour through the cracks. You had to be alone so you'd finally hear what the noise had been drowning out. And maybe this is the part nobody warned you about. The isolation was part of the initiation. You weren't forgotten, you were being formed. The wilderness wasn't a punishment, it was a forge. And now you've been tempered by fire. Now you know what's real. Now you trust your intuition more than you trust appearances. Now you see beyond the surface. You've seen how people disappear when you're not useful. You've seen how doors slam that once welcomed you. You've seen how quickly the world pulls back when your spirit starts rising. But now listen close. This is what they never wanted you to know. That kind of loss was a key, not a lock. It didn't block your future, it unlocked your anointing. You see, you thought you were cursed, but really you were chosen. You were chosen to walk through fire and not be burned. Chosen to carry light into places that only darkness had ruled. Chosen to hold truth in a world addicted to lies. Chosen to feel deeply because numbness was never your destiny. And that sensitivity they mocked. That was your gift, that knowing you always had. That was your compass, that weirdness they couldn't understand. That was your uniqueness calling out to something greater. They tried to make you small, to mold you into something palatable, predictable, plain. But you were never meant to blend in. You were born to break patterns. Your path was never about fitting in. It was about breaking free. And when you did, when you let go of everything you were pretending to be, that's when the real you started breathing again. You didn't come here to be liked. You came here to be light. So no, you're not behind. You're not late. You're not lost. You were rerouted. You were recalibrated. You were realigned. God saw what you couldn't. He saw where that relationship was taking you. He saw what that job was doing to your soul. He saw the slow erosion of your identity. So he ended it, abruptly, without your permission. Because love doesn't always come in comfort. Sometimes love comes in collapse. Now let me ask you something. What if your breakdown was just God's way of clearing the path? What if the pain wasn't punishment, but pruning? What if the silence wasn't abandonment, but strategy? What if your delay was not denial, but divine disguise? Because now, after all the tears, the late nights, the confusion, you're standing here different. Your eyes are sharper. Your spirit is quieter but stronger. Your boundaries are holy now. You no longer chase what drains you. You no longer explain your worth. You no longer fear solitude. Because now you've met yourself there. You've crossed the threshold. You've graduated from survival to sovereignty. From people-pleasing to purpose. From proving to presence. You're not the same anymore. And that's not a tragedy. It's a testimony. You were never being punished. You were being positioned, set apart for a reason, delayed so you wouldn't detour, stripped so you could finally stand unclothed and unafraid in your truth. And now it's time to rise. Not the old you, not the one who hustled for scraps of love, not the one who dimmed their brilliance to be digestible. No, now, the real you rises, the one who walks with purpose, the one who speaks with clarity, the one who no longer waits for permission because you don't need to be found. You've remembered yourself, you don't need to chase. What's for you is already circling back, tenfold. You don't need to fear another loss. You've already survived your personal apocalypse, and what's left is indestructible. So let them wonder, let them watch, let them whisper about the glow-up they didn't see coming. Just smile, because they didn't see the grave you crawled out of. They didn't see the demons you silenced. They didn't see the nights you held your soul together with nothing but faith and breath. But God saw, and heaven kept the receipts. Now is your season of overflow. Now is your time to walk like you're already crowned. Not in ego, but in essence. You don't have to announce it. Your energy speaks louder than words ever could. This world is about to witness the one thing it tried to prevent. The rise of the authentic, unapologetic, untouchable you. If this woke something up in you, don't just scroll away. This was meant for you. Subscribe if you want more messages like this, straight from source. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs to remember their fire.